Hello and welcome to Now Read This with Shazam Watkins here, reporting from the forest. It's actually a park that's not too long away from my house, and I come out here to bathe in the sun and get away from people if I can. Fortunately, you kind of run into some people, so I'm not really that far out. But here, I'll let you see the gorgeous Washington State woodlands. This is not the wilderness. I plan on actually hitting the wilderness at some point soon, but I figured because I haven't done a book review for a while that I would just go do something fun. So here I am. I was trying to find a sunny spot, but it's like the evening, so sun isn't exactly shining through the trees at this point. Anyway, I know I haven't been reviewing tons of books lately, but I've been finishing quite a few of them. It's kind of hard to go back and review books. I actually just finished the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. It was cool. It was good. I enjoyed it. I don't think it was mind-blowing or anything like that, but I've figured out that it's actually really tough to go back and review fantasy books, because they all start to kind of blend into one another. But I just finished another Haruki Murakami book called Kafka on the Shore. I thought it was Kafka on the Shore, but apparently the author, Kafka, that's what it's from. And, more and more I'm just really appreciating Murakami's work. This is the third book from him that I've actually read so far. He's got quite a few, and I know there's a bunch that I really have to get through. I actually filmed a review for, I think it's south of the border, west of the sun, but it got a little too personal in some way, and I didn't want to post that one. But I plan on reading that because it's kind of a short one again and reviewing it. But this is a great book. So Murakami is becoming one of my favorite authors, simply because when I don't feel like reading anything, whenever I pick up one of his books, it feels like I'm not actually necessarily reading anything super dense or hard to get through. It always is something that I want to continuously read. It's very easy for me to sit down and read his works. They're always sort of philosophically inclined. There's a lot of hidden meaning. There's a lot of weird shit that goes on. Japan, I love the Japanese people. Some of my favorite music and video games and stuff like that comes from Japan. So it's interesting reading. This is my first Japanese author that I've ever really read. And I know that's not like deep lore stuff. A lot of people read Murakami, but it always starts out with something. It's like his books always come from a place that's rooted in a time of life, regardless of whether he is living that at the current time or not. So like Hard-Boiled Wonderland and The End of the World felt a bit like an early midlife crisis. South of the Border, West of the Sun felt more of like an actual midlife crisis. And then this one is sort of more of a coming of age, realization of identity, and learning to cope with life, I guess, because the main character is like 15 years old in this. So it centers around a boy named Kafka. He took that name, and he is originally from Tokyo, and he has this mindset on going to a certain place and living in the corner of a library, which every person that's obsessed with reading can probably, identify with to some degree. I know I can. And so that start sort of reminded me of the never-ending story, which I've actually still never gotten through. I've started it a billion times, but the concept of running away to a place where there are really no consequences, no one telling you what to do, no authority figures, and you just sort of being surrounded by this aura of knowledge. So he runs away from home. He lives with his father, who is a single parent, and he doesn't know what happened to his mother or his sister, but he has vague memories of them leaving when he was around 4 years old. So him running away is to get away from his dad, from memories, basically, and experiences. So he travels to this section of Japan, I can't remember what the name of it is, and ends up meeting a few kind of random characters that help him out along the way. And simultaneously, as this is happening, a lot of the time Murakami has 2 or 3 threads that are going simultaneously while the novel takes place, and they sort of weave in and out and reveal aspects of the plot and story structure in a disconnected way. So what you're reading at first is Kafka's perspective, and then it kind of moves into this strange government military relay of information and records of a certain event taking place in a certain district of Japan, and that district ends up being the one that Kafka travels to and lives in the corner of a library. So he actually does end up accomplishing his mission and his goal, but along the way he's searching for his mother and his sister and trying to figure out, where his place in life actually is, what is the driving force and purpose behind his existence, and I don't believe that he really knows what it is. I don't really want to get into too much of the plot. I always end up accidentally spoiling things, but there's a lot of really interesting characters. Murakami has a way of revealing or writing these characters in that make no sense in reality sometimes. And there's a lot of jumps. It's very fragmented. It feels disconnected, like I said, but still you end up wanting to continue to read. It's very strange because it's not like the most gripping tale. It's not an adventure necessarily, but something about the way that he writes is very poetic, and I end up really, really enjoying just pretty much even the parts that you might think are boring, and I kind of he switches from perspectives chapter by chapter, and you find yourself really wanting to know what's going on chapter to chapter. So there's not a lot of room. It doesn't feel dry to me at all. I'm gonna move this a little closer. I hope that you can hear me because I don't have my microphone with me. Wow, it's almost 500 pages, which I didn't really realize. I thought it was shorter than that. Another character that he goes into is sort of a cat detective, which I always love things that tie in felines. Cats are super strange. I actually hated them until about 2 years ago when my roommate brought one home, and I hated it then. And since then, over time, I've started to kind of learn how these animals think, and it's very different from dogs, and it's very different from really anything. They're sort of they're unique animals, which actually reminds me of what Alan Moore talks about in his book Jerusalem, is that pigeons and cats are really the only animals that can physically transcend to the ghost scene in Alan Moore's work Jerusalem, which is the higher dimensional place where ghosts reside. But cats somehow are able to flit between these places. So you'll see a cat disappear and reappear really far away, and Alan Moore's imagines that they actually use kind of portal seams in reality to traverse the environment that they're in, especially when they're scared or when they need to move very quickly. Anyway, I digress. I'm getting sidetracked. But there's a guy in here named Mr. Nagata, and he is able to communicate with cats. He speaks their languages somehow. His character comes from the military side, which is almost like an X-Files relating of a certain event that happened in this section of Japan where the story is taking place. And Mr. Nagata was in a coma and woke up and is not very intelligent, but has developed the ability to speak with cats. So he's actually hired by a lot of people who have lost cats to go find their stray cats. So he gets kind of intertwined in Kafka's story simply by looking for a cat. And Mr. Nagata is this very strange, almost childlike, elderly man who has a knack for convincing people to help him without really trying to convince them, and is just a very lovable kind of old elderly character. And Kafka is also intertwined with these two characters at the library in which he's living, named Oshima and Miss Seke, I believe is her name. And there's a bunch of weird ass shit that goes on. Murakami will write these very strange, semi-perverted sexual fantasy experience things. It's kind of been it's like a staple of all three of the books I've read. It's very graphic and descriptive about sexual things. I guess Japan kind of is obsessed with phallic objects and things like that, so no surprise there. But it was a little bit disturbing. There are some scenes that you kind of read and you're almost like, what the fuck is happening? I can't believe this. He's actually writing this. But if you can kind of get past the weirdness, I think you'll enjoy it and find it fun. And then the other thing is, every time I get to the end of his book, it always feels like there should be more to go on. And you kind of feel I feel as I'm reading them, that I'm always learning something and then end up at the end of the book not really knowing what the hell it was that I learned. So in some ways, I guess you could call it pointless fiction, but not if it really entertains you and not if it speaks to you on a deeper level. I want to read it again. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of the philosophical elements and complicated shit that goes along with novels, but I would highly recommend it. I think there's sexual descriptions and there's some violent stuff, so I wouldn't necessarily let my kids read it when I have them. But it is still sort of an innocent adult coming of age tale. It's almost like a children's story written for adults or people that are grown up. And that's something, again, that I really find magical about his writing, is it takes me back to a place of youth where I haven't really visited in my mind for a long time. And so you start to feel very nostalgic when you're reading his work. And yeah, I totally recommend Kafka on the Shore. If any of you are Murakami fans and you have a recommendation about what I should do next, I have some great Japanese friends, and they recommended A Wild Sheep Chase as the next one. And they also recommended Norwegian Woods, which apparently is one of his masterpieces. But yeah, thank you for joining me on Now Read This. I hope this audio is sufficient. I really enjoyed talking to myself in the middle of the woods. I probably sound like an insane person to any animals or people that may or may not be hanging out around here. It'd be really funny if like a cougar came up behind me and then I'd have to stab it. So yeah, I love you guys. I will be uploading another chapter of The Hobbit very soon, and I may review another book and switch positions because I finished another book that really resonated with me. Anyway, I love you guys. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me. And until next time, may the good blood guide your way. I am Shazam. Farewell.